Alhamdulillah, I hope everyone is doing well, inshallah. I am going to be filming part 2 of my Journey to Islam video. I am outside of the Mezquita in Cordoba, and I filmed it yesterday, but I'm refilming it today because I'm not really sure how well the footage turned out. So, if you watched part 1, you know that I came from a Christian family. I had 2 parents who were Christian, and there was hypocrisy. I saw a lot of hypocrisy. People said one thing and did another, and I really just did not like that growing up. I saw that in my friend group, in my own household, things like that. So I was really interested in religion. Eventually, as you'll notice, as you'll remember in part 1 of my Journey to Islam videos, is that I ended up going to Berkeley, California, and going to university there and studying Islam under Hatem Bazian. Alhamdulillah, I just really lucked out with that. Well, actually, it was a blessing, let's be honest. So then in my final semester of Berkeley, I went to Granada for my semester abroad and learned all about Islam, Islamophobia in Europe, things like that, and really fell in love with this religion, Alhamdulillah. And in that program, the semester abroad in Granada, I learned about how a lot of Latinos in the US were converting to Islam and how they learned about Muslim Spain. I mean, Spain was a Muslim country for, almost 1,000 years. And these Latinos in the US, Mexico, Central America, South America learned this and thought, well, these are my natural roots. This is I'm Muslim, like this is my heritage. And it was actually pretty cool. So I thought, well, that's really interesting. And so I decided to study for my grad program, conversion to Islam. Not only because I thought it was fascinating how people adopt new practices and new ways of being, but also specifically to Islam, because I myself was going through that process. And I wanted to study more to understand what I was feeling inside and how I started implementing these practices. And so I studied conversion to Islam at NYU, Alhamdulillah. And to be honest, I was shocked at the level of Islamophobia. So not only was I getting hate or tension from my family and friends, but from those within academia. Those professors at NYU who were actually studying Islam were also Islamophobic, which is like really strange. But it's a $1 billion industry, Islamophobia, and so it's not really that surprising. And one of my academic advisors, she said to me, Ali, why do you want to study conversion to Islam? And because I had so much pushback from friends and family, from childhood friends, everywhere, I thought, I don't know. I don't know if I should just tell her the truth or I should just... Anyway, I did end up telling her the truth. And I said, Professor, it's because I'm thinking of converting myself. And the level of repulsion, disgust, just like contempt in her face, her body language was just, it was obvious. And I thought, oh gosh, okay, so not only am I getting it from friends and family, but I'm getting it from the academy as well. And it was actually kind of surprising and sad, really. But I kept my head down. I never told anybody again, really, what I was doing or what I was feeling and that, things like that. And I just did my coursework, kept my mouth shut. But I wanted to start practicing. So I started going to the Islamic Center at NYU and fell in love with the community there. And Alhamdulillah, because they have a program called Conversations. And it's a monthly group that meets at the Imam Latif's apartment in New York City. And they it's a convert group. So what they do is they talk. It's kind of a therapy session, to be honest with you. We talk about what we're going through, how we're feeling. And because Imam Latif's wife, she's a beautiful person, Alhamdulillah, she's a convert herself. So she kind of leads the group, and we have bagels and coffee and stuff. And it was quite nice. And I went for probably about, I don't know, 8 months. And every Sunday morning, it was Sunday morning, I would think, okay, today's the day I'm gonna, say my Shahada at Imam Latif's house. Today's the day. And the crazy part is he never showed up. He was busy, obviously. Imams are super, super busy. And he was never there. So I never got to say my Shahada. So that was unfortunate, but I have to trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's timing and not mine. So that's just the way it was. So when I was in NYU doing my coursework on conversion, studying this phenomenon, I was interviewing Latinas who were converting, and Alhamdulillah, they were so generous with their time and their stories, and I just felt so lucky that I got to learn about this process from these women's stories. And so I did that, and it's incredible. So I was learning about that, and I wanted to volunteer. So I was volunteering has always been super, super important to me. I was in 8th grade, like in junior high, volunteering at my local hospital. I was a candy striper, so I donned this cute little outfit and gave cookies and juice to the senior citizens, which, now that I think about it, is probably not a good idea to give elderly people tons of sugar, but Alhamdulillah, that's the way it was. So volunteering is a big part of my life, and I decided to volunteer at a Muslim organization in New York City that focuses on feeding people that live on the streets, homeless people. Hey guys, I just got kicked out of the courtyard in Cordoba, outside of the Mesquita in Cordoba. I guess you're not allowed to film with audio. You're not allowed to film with audio. You're not allowed to use a tripod in the actual Mesquita. Yeah, so I'm outside. I guess this is some sort of library. Okay, so take 2. More like take 3 or 4. Anyway, so as I was saying, I started volunteering at a soup kitchen uptown. And it was a Muslim organization, and the woman there who was running it, the first Sunday that I was there, she said, she was sort of skeptical about who I was and what I was doing there. And she said to me, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I'm here to volunteer. This is something I want to, incorporate into my life." And she's like, "Well, why?" And I'm like, "Well, give back and charity, and this is an important part of the religion." And she said, "Are you even Muslim?" And obviously I hadn't taken my Shahada yet, but although I wanted to, I hadn't done it. And I was like, immediately, I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I had felt it in my heart, but I hadn't taken my Shahada. So I was like, yeah, I am. Like, I am Muslim, right? And she sort of looked at me and just sort of like, well, where did you take your Shahada? And I said, well, I've been to Talif in Fremont, California, which is true. I had been, but I hadn't taken my Shahada there. But I was so taken aback. I was so taken aback by her skepticism of me that I just blurted that out. Unfortunately, but that's the way it worked out. So, needless to say, I didn't go back because I felt very uneasy around this woman. And after that event, it was sort of strange. People in the Muslim community at the ICNYU and the Latina converts, some of them started unfollowing me on social media, emails, people saying oh, we know who you are, we're going to tell everybody about you, and good luck interviewing any other women. I thought, okay, it's weird. I'm like, who am I? And it got out that I was some sort of government agent or something that was like, and I understand because surveillance amongst the Muslim community in New York and in the United States in general is pretty bad. So I get it. I get the nervousness around quote unquote foreigners. But Alhamdulillah, we all know that Islam is not a race, right? It's a religion of all races and for all times. So that was kind of awkward. So I stopped going to the ICNYU, I stopped going to the converts group, and I obviously didn't go back to the volunteering organization at the soup kitchen. So flack from inside the community, outside the community, in my own family group, friend group. So I sort of stopped practicing. I also wasn't practicing as much as I should have been. That's 100% on me, obviously. So I left NYU, did my program. I left NYU, I got into a MSW program in New York City. I really wanted to work with Syrian refugees, which goes back to the volunteering sort of mindset that I've always had. We're told in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the best of deeds, like it's really important to give to those who have less than us. That's the privilege. Like there are people have more privilege than others, and that's by design, right? Some of us have more privileges so that He can test us to see how we give back to others. Alhamdulillah. So volunteering comes very natural to me. I wanted to work with the Syrian refugees. I wanted to help them integrate into American society. So I got into an MSW program. And first year went fine, alhamdulillah. Second year, right before my second year, I got really sick. Unfortunately. And I had stopped practicing, I wasn't praying anymore. And after I got really sick in that summer of right before my second year at MSW school, I got really sick. And I stopped practicing, I stopped going to the masjid, stopped going to the converts group because somehow I was some sort of government plant or something. So that just sort of pushed me off of the whole thing. So I didn't go, but I did go back when I got really sick. I went back to the masjid, the ICNYU, and I had the most amazing experience with a convert, a Latina convert, Salama. Inshallah, she is still doing well. And she said, Ali, where have you been? I've been praying for you. And we hugged and I cried. She was so sweet. I'm not a crier. And I certainly don't cry in public, but her warmth and her generosity and her character was so beautiful that I just felt like comforted by her. Alhamdulillah, and inshallah she's doing well. So that second year in MSW school was extraordinarily hard for me. Alhamdulillah, it's amazing when you get tested, and I had been pushed away from the community. I pushed myself away from the Muslim community, and just felt very, very alone. And alhamdulillah for my husband, because he was pretty much the only one there supporting me. Friends and family basically poured salt on my wounds and really treated me poorly. And that's when you really know, when you're going through the toughest times, you really realize who is your friends and family and who is not. And alhamdulillah for that whole experience, being diagnosed with cancer and other health diagnoses. Let me know if you want me to expand on that in future videos. Inshallah, I can do that. I have no problem talking about that stuff. So, alhamdulillah, it's interesting because I felt so far away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and yet the most interesting thing is if my friends and family hadn't abandoned me, except for my husband, I wouldn't be where I am today. Because when you have no one except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you realize He is the only one that can help you. You know what I'm saying? So I got sick and I felt so far away from him, and yet it's the only thing that I could grasp onto when I was super sick. It's weird, right? So, Alhamdulillah, it's sort of a weird phenomenon. So, yeah, it's crazy, guys. So, Alhamdulillah for my husband, and yeah, and now I feel closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than I have ever in my life. And so I had to go through that hardship in order to be where I am today. And so if you're going through that hardship, y'all, like, we are going to be tested. And I was tested through my health. I was always the healthiest one in my family. And yet I was the sickest. I got the sickest out of anybody in my family. Anybody that I know, actually. So I was tested, and yet even though I had left the mosque and I had left the community, I actually got closer to Allah, which I'm not advocating for you to leave the mosque or the community, but because I felt so far away from him, and yet that spark was still within me, that I was like, I had no one else. Like, everybody had abandoned me, right? So that's all I had. And obviously I had my husband, but I mean spiritually, like Allah, like God, right? So it's like, that's all I had. So I leaned on him, I leaned in to him, and Alhamdulillah, I'm healthier now than ever. I'm happier now than ever. I'm practicing, I'm praying 5 times a day. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I'm like days away, inshallah, from taking my Shahada. So, which will, inshallah, be in 4 days in Granada. So being diagnosed with cancer and other health diagnoses, if you want me to talk about that, let me know in the comment section. I'm more than willing to talk to people about that because I know what that's like. DM me, Instagram, Twitter, obviously X, and here on YouTube. And inshallah we can chat because I know what that's like. So yeah, that's part 2. Inshallah, I will be filming more in Cordoba in the next few days. And yeah, that'll be part 3, and inshallah, the last piece of the puzzle after I take my Shahada. Thank you so much for watching, and inshallah you're all doing well.